All right, let's start.
Okay, let's go.
I will start with introducing you a little bit, and you add what you would think should be added, or you correct me if I get something wrong. You're a dancer and a choreographer from Australia. You have your own studio, Omeo Dance Studio, already since the 90s.
Well, the company's called Omeo Dance, but the studio I have now is the Orbos Studio for Dance Research.
And it's mainly for research, right?
Yes. Or exploration. It's not a production house.
Yeah. And you were like 10 years in France as a resident artist for Atelier de Paris?
Associate artist of the Atelier de Paris, okay. Caroline Carlson. Yeah.
That's like really one central part of your career.
Absolutely.
Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say you're known for a method of dance improvisation. Improvisation is always a bit of a complicated word, but I would still call it that way. You're working on a method of your own since for many decades that is really also influencing the dance world in a way of you're also teaching a lot. And you're like, there's some knowledge that is passed on that is traveling and that influences others. So yeah, of course you created many shows, many performances that were shown, I wouldn't say all over the world because that sounds like in every country, but a lot around the world. Is there anything that I'm completely leaving away with this short introduction?
Yeah, I don't know how much is important for you. But I grew up in the country, a long way from dance classes, so I left home when I was 12 to start dancing.
To become a dancer?
Yeah. It was a long journey, you know. And I trained in classical dance first, and then I escaped to contemporary. And anyway. We'll probably cover some of the things that came out of that period. I think there was a really formative period before I went to France. So I had a studio in Sydney called Omeo Dance Studio, and that was a really formative time for me. I was there in that studio every day.
That was like the real research beginning.
Yeah, that's where I really discovered my method, I would say. Yeah, and then it was tested and expanded and challenged and grew in France because of the incredible connection with the dancers there that I had.
How would you, for someone that doesn't know anything about you, how would you describe what you're doing?
My focus is on the way movements are forming. Yeah. So it's not on what the movements represent, or the idea of the movement, or what they show, or how it's not a virtuosity of the movements, though there can be incredible things that occur. But I would say it's more about developing a kind of virtuosity of attention, that people can access any part of their body. The dancer can be aware of that and follow that, or follow something over there, or shift. So there's a kind of like a constant mapping and remapping of the whole body by the dancer, so that they're available to everything and to be able to choose something each moment. So I say the work's about where you're coming from, not where you're going to. So most of the attention is on what's producing the movement and the tools that I've developed, distilled from my dancing, that help them to find movement there already, rather than go and make a movement or look for a movement. Another way of thinking about it is that I think of the body as a kind of an organism that the dancing actually impacts back onto the dancer as much as it goes out to the audience. And it's not that it's not on show, it's totally on show, but the driving force is about how it's being produced by the dancer artist, rather than what it's going to look like or what it's going to represent out there.
What was the moment when you started working like this, and especially how did you recognize that this is the path that I want to continue on?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So at the end of 2004, I was working in a studio in Sydney called Critical Path, and this is after many years of work. And for up until 2005, I was setting movement. I was choreographing it so that it was, the steps were set, yeah. And then what happened at the end of 2004, I was in a lab, I was running a lab with about, 20 dancers in Sydney. And it was a month-long lab, and so I was also involved in the research. I wasn't just leading them, I was also, like, it was a kind of, I was leading it, I was facilitating it, but it was also, there was a lot of exchange going on. And so there was permission for me to dance in a performative situation where people would watch me, but in a kind of in-house situation, not like a knowledgeable audience, of dancers that I'd trained. And I found myself in this, packing all that I knew about how to follow the beginning of a movement, or which piece of the body to follow, or I filled myself up with all of the possible ways of producing movement that I knew, and I just packed it in, and it was just like this incredible kind of feeling myself and then suddenly it was just like this explosion, like a volcano, and I took off. And it was like a moment in time where suddenly I realised I was on to this flow of happening to me that I could facilitate. It was incredibly exciting. And then in the beginning of 2005, I was working with a couple of dancers in Perth, and it was a similar situation where we had quite a free-ranging development period. We weren't trying to make a piece. And so I was able to deepen that work with them and share it with them. And then I went back to France, where I'd already moved to, and it just became this basis of, realising that the processes that were producing the movement were much more exciting to me than the movements themselves. And that setting material, I kept trying to go back to setting, and I go, is this still something I want to do? And I would find there was just so much more fun with not setting it. I kept going, but maybe, when you set things, you can get really crafty at what goes where. Like, beautifully composed work is exquisite. But the pleasure as a performer was in the not setting. So
there is this very clear starting point.
Very clear starting point, really clear.
That's interesting.
It was really clear to me that there was no going back to set work. This was too much fun.
You developed this as a dancer a lot on your own body.
Yes, absolutely.
Then was there the second moment when you realized, I can actually pass it on to others they can use it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was already teaching. In Australia, there's really no jobs for dancers, hardly at all. So you need to do something else. So I was teaching, and I really liked it, and I discovered I really liked it. And also I learned things from it. So how do I transmit that? And I still, as I discover new things, because the method is still expanding and still transforming and evolving. Though that was a moment in time, that blasting off when this whole world opened, there's a continuum of making pieces and of teaching and of my own studio practice. So the most constant, they're all constant, but the studio practice research has always continued. The making pieces has always continued. The teaching has always continued. So when I had this explosion, those things still continued. So when I was in this process in Perth with these dancers, straight after that moment, that breakthrough moment, I was facilitating for them.
It wasn't like a second step.
No, I don't think so. Right. Except that then what happened that was around the time that I moved to Paris. I was invited to Paris by Michel Caserta, the director and founder of the Biennale de Danse du Val-de-Marne. And, I was given support to work with dancers, and they were dancers who hadn't worked with me before. So I didn't have those seeds of other practices that might have been kind of part of that, helped them into that work. I had to start again. So, but they were phenomenal. The French dancers are phenomenal. So are the dancers here. There are amazing. They're amazing dancers in Europe, and they just soaked it up. But I knew it would take time, and so I said we have to take 2 years. So I trained them for 2 years before we performed. Mm-hmm. And
in that relation, the process here is very quick.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about some of the, I don't know if it makes sense to call them principles or things that I observe in the rehearsals. I mean, I'm not with you every day, but I've seen some of the rehearsals now. And some of the things that come up more often. One you already mentioned is, of course, the weight and the training, like how you deal with that. Just the body in relation to gravity is already something.
Yeah. And it's always there. It's always there. And my job is to get them to remember that it's always there, because they go away from it and then they have to make things up. They have to think things up. Whereas if they're with gravity all the time, they don't have to think anything up, because they can feel the back of their leg and then they can initiate from there. So it's about it gives you more feedback.
It's a way of guiding the attention, right?
Yeah, like number 1A is to follow only one piece of the body at a time, like to find this piece, then to find that piece, and then to find a piece over there, and then to find a piece over there, and then to find a piece down there, and then a whole piece at the back of you, and then a piece, so it's like this, you just choose one piece, and it's incredibly rigorous, because what happens is a lot of dancers, they engage all these other pieces, and you go, no, you've got 10 there, no, get rid of those, go back to gravity, and just take that one, So there's a whole lot of shedding and what I could now call draining with the rest of the body, so that just that one is coming out and not this one, or not, or just the head goes or something. There's often this thing with dancers that the hand goes out and the eyes follow it, And so the hand can go out and the eyes don't follow it, because the eyes are over there and the back's where the back's is and this hand's where it is. And so everything is already somewhere. So I want to isolate these. So I start, so what these tools were doing were actually dividing the body up in weird ways, not even anatomical. Like could be anatomical, could be bones, but can also be lumps. Like this lump goes over there and that lump goes over there, and then there's no lumps going anywhere, and then that lump goes way out there. And it's challenging because, I'm asking them to look like they're doing nothing from the outside sometimes, some moments, to feel something, to source something. If I want to find a piece of my back to initiate from, I need to feel it first and get the feedback from it. And I can't if I'm out there worried or uptight or showing or out there. I have to come back in or come back down. I come back down to gravity, into my breath, there it is, and then I can explode with it.
If I had to summarize what I see, one thing that comes up the most, I think, is interrupt yourself.
Well, it's about being able to make any choice at any time. So you practice interrupting so that you know that you can take the next thing, but interrupting's not a thing of value in itself. For me, they're all of the focuses, they're really just to get people engaged. So they're on, so they've got enough support to be on. So that tool number 1A produces that interruption, because I get them to preference where they're coming from, not where they're going. So they may dissolve or erode or fray the ends of movements. So they don't go to there. No, they come from here. And they might not get anywhere because the next piece takes over. But ultimately, you might follow that one for 3 weeks, because there's no set thing about how long something should last for. It's range that I want. And when we work with touch, because I use a lot of touch support to help to kind of reinforce that you're here, or reinforce that you're here. That I always do it with a very varied rhythm. So there might be touch here that might last for quite a while, or then there might be touch there and then there and then there, and then it doesn't last, or then there's no touch for a while. So the rhythms of those interruptions that are going to happen should become quite varied eventually. Yeah, but the other thing that's indispensable to interruption or rupture is flow. Yeah. You can't have rupture without flow, so you have to have something that's continuing underneath.
For me, it seems now to be very much like an arrangement of solos. Is that because of the work that you do with us, where you decided it's going to be mostly solos, or is it more like a longer running principle?
Well, I find that when one person is really engaged with this work, it's so full that another body next to them diminishes it. Like people say the body's an instrument. I don't think it's an instrument. I think it's a whole orchestra. You know, you've got you've got the violins down here, and you've got the double bass over there, and you've got the cymbals over there, and you've got, you know, you've got like, you just got masses of moving parts, thousands of them. So it's really complex. Decision making in one body is incredibly complex when you're that awake to the choice making as I'm asking them to be. It's huge. So yes, it is predominantly solo work, and you know, like today when we were working with, I called it anarchy hour. You know, at the end when they were I just let them go with Frederick on the piano, and they start to get into these group improvisations. My worst nightmare. I hate group improvisation. It's just I can't see anything. You know, if you're going to stick all those bodies together, then make some really sharp choices about why and where, and you know, it's just flabby.
So let's talk about improvisation.
If you must.
I feel I must, or also I'm interested in it, because one thing is we as a company, it's our thing, let's say, and in a way it's the reason why you are here.
Apparently.
And even though I understand and I respect that you say, it's not really what I would call my work, still as a description, it's a shorthand at least to understand something, in opposition of movements are set, of course. Why do you avoid it? One question. And how is it improvisation or not?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's context, you know, like, I think you've created a different context for it here, where it's very intelligent and it's very sophisticated. But in general, improvisation, it just means to, what is it? Like it you know, it means so many different things to so many different people, and often it's means just do whatever you want or make it up. And that's not what I'm doing. What we are doing is deep compositional work. It's deeply compositional. It's not that the movements are set, but the tools or choreographies that produce the movement are set. And they play with them how they want, or they mix them with another one that I've given them. So it becomes a kind of choreographic support to let them, allow them to play. And so if you call play improvisation, maybe beyond the tool is where the improvisation is. I don't know. I don't even know what improvisation is. There's so many different forms of improvisation. But you can call it that if you want to. In this context, I don't mind.
What do you say the way how you work is more related to having a certain process? Like you decide, I want to go this way because it changes the process or it changes the result?
Oh, it's definitely both for me, definitely. Because I am exhilarated by the result when I see someone who goes past the tool, absolutely exhilarated, and I see them fully in the present, and they have enough grasp on it that they can actually dilate the present a bit and let something exist a little bit longer, so they're also aware of what's being created, but they're in the experience of it at the same time. And I've seen that already here. I've seen dancers do it. And I value that very much. So that is an aesthetic value that I find that when they are charged with these tools and enough maturity and experience to take them on and then let themselves play with that, beyond that, they do extraordinary things. And they reveal this, the way things come into being, and I feel like it's quite profound. Like some people cry in the sessions when they get a kind of like, oh my God, and they just like they're on this kind of like, it's like quite liberating, and I think that's really great. Like it doesn't always happen because sometimes you just have to do the work and be with the tool, but sometimes the tool takes someone somewhere that's incredibly liberating, and I think that's an incredible gift to an audience. So I am interested in the product in a sense, absolutely.
You already said that usually the audience is close.
That helps that reception of that work. So the dancers are not trying to project out there. They're actually in a much more intimate, domestic context with the audience.
Did you ever work like with a frontal?
Yes, yes. I had a big rock and roll show.
And did it work for you?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, I love rock and roll.
So it's
not
had
electric
like
guitarist
out
and
of the
big performer and me. It was a trio of 3 old people with. Yeah, no, it's totally frontal. Yeah, no, but that was because, like, the thing was, back in 2005 when this work started, this kind of so-called improvisation work started, choreographic improvisation. I knew that it was really important that the dancer felt they weren't stuck in the spotlight if they didn't, if the thing wasn't working for them. Yeah. So I never put the dancers straight out into that frontal situation until they've had 5 years with the work, and because that was my experience with it. And after 5 or after 10 years, you can do it anywhere. You can do it in front of 2,000 people. It doesn't matter. But you can't do it in the beginning because of that fear of looking like you're doing nothing, even for a split second. So this process of having the audience close means that the dancer you don't have to, if you want to get, like if you're on a big stage and you're dancing away and you go, oh God, this is not working, this is shit, this is like, I want to get out, and you got to walk across the stage to get out. Like this, they're not going to go, So they need permission to leave. So I may create that permission for them to leave. So you just leave when you want. Someone else will take over. So we've got a kind of SWAT team in each area. You go if you want, so that you practice not being out there, not really on. If you're not on and you've got doubt or there's a bit of fear or you've lost the plot, go. You can go. Then you come back when, So this permission to leave is super, super important, and you need to stage it in a way that lets dancers do that. So they're not forced anyway. No force. They're not forced to be out there when it's not good for them.
What do you say you are working on staging intimacy in a way? Staging
intimacy, yeah, I'd say that's probably something, yes.
Something might resemble something. Is that ever interesting for you?
Well, if it did resemble something, it would only be fleetingly. What I'm doing is I'm diving back inside the body. So, okay, you might get this thing coming up or something. I don't know, it looks like something. You might think it represents something. But if I attach to that representing something, I've forgotten everything else. I've lost the rest of the body. Whereas if this thing's coming up and I notice it, and I might leave it there for you for a little while, but I'm already over here. Oh no, we're already... So it's the work that does that, but it's also because I want the body to be all available. The whole orchestra is ready at every moment. And if we stick with something that becomes something, we lose the rest of the orchestra.
So would you say your work ever references anything in the world in a content way?
Oh, I knew we were going to get here. Well, yes, so when I went back to Australia in 2017, actually a bit earlier, it was 2015, so there's 10 years in Paris. Then I went back to Australia in 2015, only for a few months. But my sister took me out into the bush where I grew up, and I discovered that the whole forest that I grew up in was gone, and I wept. I was so sad, and I still feel sad about it. Australia has been ruined, and the 30 years I've spent digging around and having a great time dancing are the 30 years we've lost most of the original forest, half of the digging mammals, 25 bird species. Like, we are in an extinction crisis in Australia, and this affects me really strongly emotionally because I grew up in the country surrounded by incredible nature, and it's all gone, basically. There's tiny separate skerricks of it left, and therefore an increased risk of extinctions because there's no connectivity in the forest. So then I asked myself, what am I dancing for? If this is going on, what, you know? So I started trying to find out how to kind of meet that, you know. And I didn't know how to do that in the beginning, but I kept sort of like confronting it, and I noticed that the sort of emotionality started to produce bits of images. Like, you know, I might be just moving really slowly, and my finger might touch my cheek, and it would suddenly feel like the burnt fingers of a koala that, you know, couldn't get out of the fire quick enough, and, you know, like these images would sort of come out of the sensations. So the sensation attention started to, by just sort of dwelling in it, it started to produce images, but I knew those images were all coming from this saturating myself with these experiences of finding out what was actually going on in the environment in Australia, especially where I grew up. So then I made a piece called The Boom Project, and that had lots of that kind of process in it, but it still felt very, very I didn't know how to deal with it, really. I didn't have a dramaturg, probably needed one. And then I created this thing called DIRT, Dance in Regional Disaster Zones. So I brought artists and scientists together, and we just, you know, wrote letters and looked at stuff and tried things out. And how do we bring this into the artwork, and without being dogmatic or. Then I had developed these kind of performed lectures that had dance in it and bits of text and sort of things I would do with the audience, like get them to lie down on the floor and look at all the plastic in the roof and where all the metal had come from, and talk about and then come back to my body. And so this kind of interweaving of spoken and moved, and then that toured quite a bit, and we did that at the Sydney Opera House. That was really, felt like kind of I started to get somewhere with how I could communicate that work. And then so that process is still going on, and recently I had a big installation for 3 months, and a lot of the traces of that work, like photos and texts, and then I was also writing. It was in my studio, so I was writing on the walls and writing bits about what was going on, and also trying to find a language that would speak about the forest destruction and the body decay, or things like this thing, like I would say these words would come up from the dancing, like the future starts in miniature. And I know I'm not trying to take the dancers here into that world. It's not their world, it's not their responsibility in a way. They've got their own responsibilities. It definitely feels it's my responsibility still. But I know that work feeds back into my dancing now very strongly, and it's to do with the whole sensation awareness and to actually be attentive to the way things are changing, and to, in a way, put your will a bit in the back seat, so that the body leads, so that this whole, like, to make ourselves available to the materiality that's already there, and not impose on it, but yet still meet it. Or it's still in process for me. But I do feel like that work over the last 10 years, nearly 10 years now, with the environment in Australia, has affected the way I dance. strongly, yeah.
Going a little back to the past again, you described this like starting in Sydney, right? I read in an interview that you gave about the studio research in Sydney.
Yeah, I'm
and
your dance studio.
To me, it sounded a lot like actually a little bit of isolation, let's say.
Yeah, definitely.
From the bigger dance world seems to be important for your journey and for like focusing on something rather than being influenced from all the sides, but you bring people, you take what they bring and then you go on with it in a very directed way, it seems. Does it make sense?
Well, I mean, it's just because I grew up artistically in Australia. So it's very isolated. There's not many. I mean, certainly I grew up in the country, and also at that time in Sydney, there weren't many mentors or leaders. You know, there were the odd one, but if you wanted to do something that wasn't ballet, or then you had to. I had to go out in the wilderness on my own. There was no one there, so I was in the studio every day, and these tools and choreographies just came from 20 years in the studio. That's where they come from. They just come from work. And every now and then someone would come, like Steve Paxton came once, you know, and Lisa Nelson came, and Jennifer Monson came, different artists came, and they would stay for 2 weeks and, you know, give all their knowledge. And then we would kind of feed on that for the next 2 years until someone else came. It's kind of a starvation diet, really. So you've got to dig around in your own stuff, and that's just the situation. It's not that I think that's better, or that's just what happened to me.
What you seem to be working on is, at first at least, like really the concept or the image of their own bodies that the dancers have of themselves that they're working from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, how...
Or is that even still too abstract, too far from the body?
Not necessarily. I mean, how do they divide the body up, you know, by their experience of the different parts of it? So that's definitely part of it. It's more their inner experience of their body, of its mass and its substance and its the sensations of it, rather than the picture of it. But there is a picture because we have edges, and that's also what the audience sees, and they need to get into the back of their body, so they need a picture as well. Yeah. It
seems that this kind of concept of what a human is to me obvious in your work, that it's kind of about what does it mean to be a human, or what does it mean to have a human body, especially in the way that you emphasize that is already there before you start producing something. It's like an idea, like very much, for example, in contrast to what would be the concept of a human that ballet produces.
I don't know if you're going to get a straight answer about that. I think you have to experience the work in performance when we get there. Yeah, but I would say it's kind of, we're also animals. You know, it's quite animal in a way. The body that we're working with, but it's also very refined. So, and it's conscious. So that's incredibly refined in terms of human development, or. It's not just feeling like an animal, or I don't know, but something about the sensitivity of an animal, or the mass and the weight and the efficiency, that it's efficient, it's not doing stuff that doesn't need to do. That's definitely there, but there's incredibly complex, intelligent choices going on from adult human beings.
You mentioned one thing before that I found also interesting. You said play, like
play. Play. We have fun.
Really,
you've got to have fun. Fun's a thing. I say that fun's a thing. Fun's not always there. That's why you need a bit of choreography.
Okay.
But fun's the thing. Yeah, why do we do it otherwise? It's too hard. The world's falling apart. My God, why would you be dancing if it wasn't fun? You'd be mad. I mean, there's got to be joy in there. And it's got to charge people. Like, that's why we perform, because people get charged.
And we haven't spoken really about your work with music. Maybe we should.
Oh, okay, if you must. Yeah, music. Well, most of the time I work in silence, because if I have music, I can't hear the music in the body, the musicality of it, which is something I discovered when I was working in Belgium in the early 90s collaborating with another choreographer, and we didn't have a common language, word language. So we didn't talk for 3 months. We just went into the studio and danced. And after 6 weeks, I suddenly started hearing music, and it never went away. It's that flow thing that is, I tried to sing it sometimes, but you can't quite catch it. I can't quite. So, but music, yeah, and then, so music, I think music depends on the music. Okay, so with Frederick, that I'm working with at the moment, I mean, his music he's like the kind of 13th dancer or something, like he's working with, I think there's lots of commonalities in the kind of compositional processes underneath his work. But he's not accompanying the dance, so I'm interested in a lot of different relationships with the sound, and usually, I have had a number of musicians that I've worked with over the years for a long time. So, Bovidget, he's a cellist in Berlin. I've worked with him for like 15 years, on and off, and Hans-Wally Tischhauser, who's a Swiss electric guitarist. I worked with him a long time. We had a show, we toured a lot, and we've worked on other things as well. So, and now there's Frederick and another French musician, Edouard Perrault, who's a percussionist. So I get these sort of long journeys with musicians, and that's very exciting, because they're always composers as well, like they're, composer musicians. So they're never accompanying the work, but they're working in some similar way, perhaps. I don't know. It's always different. But obviously the rock and roll show, the guitarist was playing kind of rock and roll, and he's so full on that I had to send him away send him out while I warmed up, so I could listen in to my own musicality. And then when he came in, I had sort of learnt to develop these kind of filters that I could put in between us, so that I could kind of hear him a bit, or just hear him in the background, or like I could close off my ears a bit so I could really hear me more and not him. And then sometimes we might go together, and then so finding all these different kind of proximities to the sound, that's been a really interesting journey for me with sound. How to not respond, how to be a bit with it, how to meet it, how to go with it, so a range of things. And the thing I always ask for musicians is silence. Which goes down well with some and not with others. Yeah.
You talked about being addicted to the new, like
addicted to dancing.
New stuff that dancing can bring.
Yeah, that's
I was
right.
wondering, I find it very even like a miracle. How can something that you do over such a long time still surprise you like this? Still fuel this kind of newness?
Yes. Well,
You're very lucky to have found something that has this long. I mean, it could have that some time during your career you reach a point where you go like, I did everything that I wanted to do. Now I go somewhere else, do something else. But that didn't happen.
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know. I just love dancing, and I keep finding new stuff, and like there's always like everything. It presents itself as new because of my attention. So once I discovered about attention, it's like that thing. I haven't had that thing before, it's not like I haven't felt my back before, but that piece of it, and that it arrived at that moment, and then, oh my God, all this space happening between those fingers, so it's sort of like charging the attention. it's just the fact that I keep going to the studio, that I keep finding new stuff. And I think it's like I've never said, oh, that's it. You know, and there's also people say, write a book. Well, how could I write a book? Because it's still moving. It will keep moving probably all, while I keep dancing. It will keep moving. I'm sure it will. Yeah.
What was your relation to the 70s?
70s. 70s. Oh,
Maybe
God, that's
question.
embarrassing. Yeah, no, I think I was just... No, the 70s. I was taking a lot of drugs. Yeah, I had a great time. And then I thought, hang on. If you need those drugs to dance like that, you're not free. And I just stopped. Like that. Cold turkey. Stopped. I wasn't ever taking heroin or anything, but a lot of other stuff. So I just stopped and spent a while going, it's not very interesting. Come on, keep going. Yeah, it'll get there. And it showed me, drugs showed me how wild dancing can be, how free you can be. And then I spent many years working out how to do that without the drugs.
Is there still something that we haven't talked about that you would go like, there's this aspect that we haven't touched at all?
I think the thing is, the studio has been my biggest teacher. And I know it's different in Europe, where you get all this input, and sometimes they don't know what they are. So all they do is repeat what they were taught. But I think going into the studio every day is, for me, it is where things emerge, from whence things emerge. Yeah, studio practice for me is the most important, consistent thing to be an artist. And it's funny with dance because we often don't do that. We make stuff, but actually going into the studio without making stuff is really important. That's my final word on it.